Welcome back to Digital Futures Education. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own personal story about dropping out of college and eventually achieving my doctorate degree. So in this video, I'm going to go over how I navigated the traditional career path. I found purpose for myself and how it helped me build a career that mattered to me. So one thing I wanted to do was break down my particular path and career path with some topics that I think would be valuable to you. What do you do if the traditional career path doesn't fit you? So I realized early on in education as a student, I was an honor roll student in middle school. And then as I decided to go to a prep school for high school, I wasn't academically prepared to excel on the next level. And I really struggled with that. And so by the time that I got done at a college preparatory school, after struggling for multiple years, I turned to the arts as an area which I felt like I could focus in, I had a self-esteem in, and I could do positive things in. And I had achieved success for it, and I had a talent in this area. It was around this time that I understood now how much structure really matters to education and how some thrive in a structured environment and some don't thrive in a structured environment. Not only was I undisciplined, at that point in my life, I was in a very undisciplined place. I relied on my particular talents and strengths that I knew I had, and that was in the arts and writing, drawing, creating, expressing myself. And that's what I had. So that's what I went with. But I was unprepared to achieve really strong results in high school. So I definitely was not fit or ready for the next level of college, which spurred me to go to art school. So you have to realize that some environments are not going to be the environments that help you thrive. And you have to recognize the environments that you're prepared for, the ones that you're going to thrive within, and make the move to try to get into those environments to best support your type of learning style. My point being here was I wasn't ready for a traditional 4-year college experience. I wanted to explore, I wanted to be creative, I wanted to learn, and I was a free thinker. I wanted to think outside the box, be creative, paint, draw, and express myself. And that ultimately, that open type of environment was going to be the best for me to thrive. And that I needed that environment, and that's what I was ready for. And it would be several years before I was ready for a traditional college environment. The next topic I want to discuss is the value of non-traditional learning environments and experiences. Some of the ways that I learned in non-traditional environments was not only watching my peers and learning from their actions and seeing what the right things to do were or what proved successful, but I also became more disciplined at athletics and sports and created a routine for myself that helped support me having a positive routine. So it was at this point in my life that I actually ended up dropping out of college after about a year and a half, almost 2 years. I was struggling because I ended up working for a cleaning business and actually taking on a good portion of the cleaning business while I was attending university. Not only the art school part of the university, but also the academic part of the university that I recently got into. So my academic struggles were higher. My work struggles to try to keep up and also work quite a bit were higher. And it was at that point, everything kind of hit the fan. And with that, something had to go. And it was through that stressful period that I wasn't sure what to do. And ultimately, I decided to actually leave school and run a commercial cleaning business as my job until I could figure out what to do. It wasn't that I didn't like the academics. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in learning. I just couldn't do it all. And in terms of maturity and discipline and being ready, I still had some learning to do. So one valuable lesson I learned here was that life is school too. And that I was going to learn from this experience of taking on this business, taking on this responsibility that was up to me to be successful. And I jumped into that opportunity and was desperate to make it work and be as successful as I could. So I learned that life was work too. My reflections were important, and I was learning all along the way. No matter the choices I made, I was learning to become a better person and worker. And ultimately, all of this experience adds up. Life is an education. I learned how to extract value out of all of these experiences, whether it was the discipline of working 7 days a week, running this business, as opposed to going to school during that time. It wasn't as though I lost everything that education had to offer. I still took many of those components with me, but I learned discipline. I learned how to communicate better with people. I learned how to negotiate my own pay. I learned how to work hard and have a disciplined work ethic and understand that what I did that day mattered. I learned how to take pride in my work and show quality and care, how to make others happy with the type of business I was providing. And at the same time, I understood the value of the education I had gotten up to that point and had seen both sides. So, my point being here is that you want to extract and take value from each educational experience or life experience, no matter what, so that you can take it to the next level. And you're going to have many different types of classrooms that you're going to experience throughout your life. And it's important to take advantage of them all. So, the next question I'd like to address is, how do you handle imposter syndrome, especially after maybe you've fallen behind or maybe you haven't taken advantage of all the opportunities that you potentially could have? And all of a sudden you find yourself in a position where you're working above and beyond where maybe you thought before, or you think that you don't deserve the situation you're in. So during my life, when I was working in the cleaning business and going to college full time, there was a period where I was at Tufts University where I definitely felt like an imposter. I was cleaning restaurants at night while taking very high end academic courses during the day, and at the same time expected to be an artist with the museum school. This was a tremendous challenge for me because these environments were all very, very different and had very different expectations. And as I've told you before, I didn't feel as though I necessarily belonged at that high of academic level. And I was struggling. And this is coming out of an experience at a high school environment where I was also struggling. So I was really needing to dig deep to feel like I belonged, to be able to perform and improve my own self, my learning, my skills, all that goes along with learning new things. And ultimately, after running the business for about 3 to 5 years, the commercial cleaning business, without being in school, I eventually returned to complete some classes at museum school in Tufts to get my degree while attending other universities, and completed that degree. And I was incredibly proud of completing that degree. And it taught me persistence. It taught me how to refocus back into academics. But of course, I did graduate a little bit late. I graduated at 26. I didn't necessarily feel like I belonged. I had all sorts of imposter syndrome, but at the same time, I tried to stay disciplined and focused on what my personal goals were, no matter what society tried to judge me for. So my suggestion here is that you really need to normalize nonlinear timelines. So if you feel like you're not on a timeline relevant to your friends or what your family might want, you need to normalize it for yourself and understand that you're working towards a goal. You may have hit some bumps in the road, but you need to refocus and figure out what are the baby steps that are going to get you to that next big victory. You need to remember that everybody's progress looks very different to them and to others. So you need to remember how hard you're working, how disciplined you're trying to be to accomplish your goal. And for me, during that time when I was struggling, I just put my head down every day. I worked at night. I got up. I did what I needed to do. I went to my 1 or 2 classes. I chipped away at my degree. And ultimately, I finished it. And that made a big difference down the line. So the next question I want to address is, how do you make a comeback after you've dropped out, stopped a degree, or fallen off your path in focus? What I would say during my struggle during this period is that I needed to take a big, deep breath and understand what my next steps, the most important ones, would be. I didn't take too long. Maybe it was a year and a half to 2 years where before I re-enrolled, just even taking a couple simple classes to get going that could fit within my program. I also did it by talking with people who had supported me before with my program and getting in touch with prior mentors and people that I knew supported me. But at the end of the day, it became very important that I took it slow because it allowed me to have a pace that I feel like I could finish what I started. And that was really, really important. It's important to understand that comebacks require humility. They require you thinking about what you need to do, pulling yourself back from a situation, and looking at what next steps are really going to help, what next steps are going to be the most supportive of you going forward. You need to place yourself first and focus on your priorities. Comebacks are going to require humility, planning, and focus. You need to break the cycle of feeling any sort of shame or feeling like you can't achieve what you want to achieve. That's not going to help you. That mindset is not going to help you get the comeback you deserve for yourself. You need to step forward, isolate a few key steps, and just take those steps and do what you need to do. You need to focus on what you need, not what you think others are. All right. Everybody has a different path, and it's very important that you figure out what's going to be best for you going forward. This can be taking one course, two courses, saving money, thinking about the next step, taking small baby steps towards that next goal. But they're all going to count and add up. And even consider writing these goals down, keeping a journal, and being aware of your progress, but not letting anything stop you. You need to focus on forward motion, getting and moving forward. So the next question I want to address is, what's the correct balance between work, life, and school? I learned the hard way around energy management. I put a ton of energy to getting into college, making art, exploring the arts deeply in my first couple of years of college, to all throw it away and throw myself into a commercial cleaning business for another 3 years, leaving the degree behind. And then it wasn't until I matured a little bit and I learned how to manage my energy better when I realized what I needed to put my energy into to get the right kind of returns. And that was sleeping, managing my time well, focusing on not trying to do too much academic work that I couldn't fit within my schedule. But at the end of the day, it came down to a lot of just growing and maturing and understanding what my focus and goals would be. So managing your energy and what you're putting your energy into each day is really important. So I encourage you to even write a journal about this. Learn how to map how you spend your energy. What projects are you working on? How many hours a week are you working at your job versus working on your academics versus just working and achieving your goals? Try to avoid doing too much and getting yourself off a schedule or off kilter. And recognize within a short window of time, 1 to 2 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, if you're achieving the goals you expected from the things you're working on, whether it's taking a class, are you doing well in the class? Are you doing all the work for the class? If you're working at a job to acquire skills, are you acquiring the skills you thought? If you're thinking about setting a goal, have you taken the necessary steps to get that goal accomplished? I would urge you to not glorify the hustle all the time. Sometimes people hustle in the completely wrong direction. Hustle and motivation is only important and beneficial if it's going to help you achieve your goals. So you need to be careful how you hustle and manage your energy to achieve goals. And remember, at a certain point, everything that you do needs to contribute to your success as much as possible. If you start putting additional energy into other areas, too much time with friends, too much partying, too much doing just whatever else takes you away from those goals, you're going to find that your energy is going to be mismanaged. Your success will be sustainable when you manage your energy to make it sustainable. You're going to continue to have successes as you go through, as long as that you take a daily note of what you're putting your energy into. What gets measured gets done. Be sure that your priorities are clear and your patience gets practiced. It's that patience and dedication that's going to help bring you through. Next question I want to address is, how do you find meaning in your job when you're not sure of your path? So when I was transitioning from the cleaning business into getting my degree and then ultimately into education, I worked a number of side little jobs. One was working at a custom frame shop, which I worked at for a few months, and then I realized I was just tired and I was still running my cleaning business partially, and it was just to really make a few extra dollars. But in that experience, I also learned that it was also taking me away from focusing on maybe what my next step was with education. Although it was a little bit of a break, it provided some money, I really look back at that experience as maybe just taking a break before I took my next big step and practicing some of that patience. That's always important. And remember, I never gave up the cleaning business while I did that. So I graduated with my degree. I still had my cleaning business part time. I worked custom framing. And I remember, ironically, I trained for 3 days to work one day in a deli. And when I went to work that one day in a deli, I realized I was wasting my time and energy. Because not only was I not working in an area that I really was learning anything new in, even though I had worked in a deli before in my life, but it was taking away from my energy and it was taking away from my next goal. Now, the cleaning business was something that was sustainable for me. It was something I did at night. I was consistent. I had the habit, and it didn't take away from some of the other types of work I was doing. But whenever I tried to add an extra layer, I found myself drained. So be very careful around that hustle and taking on that extra job, and also working a job that doesn't necessarily apply too much to your next level of learning. I would say it wasn't until I started working a very small part-time job working in adult education with my fine arts skill that I finally started to connect to my field and develop more confidence with teaching and education. And I developed people skills that I knew I had from my business, and I became an important part of an adult education program. And it was my first step towards, meeting people in education, working more in education, and taking that next step at substituting and getting substitute teaching opportunities. I look at this period of time as an important period because it was that year after I finished my bachelor's degree before I decided what I was going to do next. And what I decided to do next was a master's degree in arts and learning. And that arts and learning master's degree, ironically, didn't even move to have a license. So I was doing a master's degree, which wasn't even adding an additional qualification for teaching, but it allowed me to continue to explore the arts more deeply, including technology, including storytelling, including many elements which eventually became an important part of my teaching style. And it allowed me to really discover what I wanted to do next. And that was move into arts education with a highlight on technology. And as we can see, it's that highlight on technology that eventually shaped my entire career. So what I can say is that it is important to follow your curiosity at times with your goals. Leave room to play enough with finding an experience that will give you something new and fresh to draw from. It's going to improve your networking skills, going to help you with some clarity because you are going to make mistakes and you're going to want to adjust off of those mistakes. But it's also going to keep you open and engaged because no matter what stage you are in your career, that's going to be an important thing to hold on to, staying open and engaged with opportunities. So the next question I want to address is how important is networking and building connections when building a career? I would say that it was tremendously important that as I got more serious about my career choice and moving into the arts and learning and technology space, to develop connections that were going to help me potentially have references, get job opportunities, and meet new people in fields that I hadn't met before. That was a tremendous step forward. And I think that step happens when you're ready. When you're doing the work and you're out there and you're taking advantage of opportunities and you're meeting new people, opportunities are going to come and you're going to grow with those opportunities. And it's important to recognize that your growth is going to come through those opportunities when you take that leap forward. So you have to be ready to take that leap forward. I met amazing educators, technologists, artists while working in my master's program and choosing to focus in that area of arts, learning, and develop projects that were going to help develop my future career options. It made me more flexible. I learned new skills and I matured and grew as a student. I did more writing, I did more reflection, and I was able to look back on this phase as being more prepared for whatever was going to come next as a professional. You need to remember that you're always building relationships. A single conversation can change the trajectory of your career or your entire life for a wide range of reasons. And it's important to understand that as you reach out and you develop these relationships and you have these meaningful connections, and I've certainly felt having one conversation change my career myself, and I can dig deeper into that in other videos. It's very important that you're open to it and you allow it to happen. So be open, Be ready to let these types of conversations happen and always be growing, always be looking for that next opportunity of allowing networking to help you evolve. You always want to be showing up, asking questions, and providing value to those in need. Next question I want to address is, how do you pursue purpose and progress when you feel like you're behind? I earned my bachelor's degree at 28, my master's degree at 30, 31, and my doctorate at 34. Those are not young ages. Those are ages where I was already pretty mature, had a little bit of life experience, and what I was able to do was translate it into having the discipline for academics. But that required not necessarily comparing myself with my friends, not necessarily comparing myself with others, but taking advantage of opportunities as they arose and working on my own self-development. Through all of those experiences, I never stopped learning. So through all of those experiences, working on those degrees, I never stopped learning. I never stopped trying to pursue the next step. I never stopped thinking that I could achieve more. And I think that's the passion that you need to take into degrees, areas of study, or even just achieving goals. You need to have a relentless passion for achieving your goal, finding out what's next for your learning, and how you're going to achieve your goals and set benchmarks that you can meet. The idea of being late is a myth. Success isn't about speed, it's about direction, passion, and commitment to what you want. It's also about determining the finish lines that are important to you and knowing why they're important to you. The next question is, what types of questions should I have before enrolling in school or taking a specific job? The first question you should ask yourself, is this program aligned with my goals? For example, if I could go back in time, I might have considered taking a master's degree program that ended in a license. But doesn't mean I didn't have a great experience. I just might have double checked that. The next question is, can I reasonably manage the workload? And that's very important, because managing the workload is incredibly important to your success and understanding what's going to be your responsibility to being successful within that program. The next question is, what kind of supports or structures do I need to be successful? And I think this is an incredibly important question, as you know that probably better than anybody else. What have been places that you have failed in the past because maybe you didn't identify that was a really important part of your need to be successful? And I would say this one's really important. This one's really important. Does this opportunity energize me or drain me? And you're going to find a number of short-term opportunities that are going to energize you, but they may not propel your career tremendously forward. And you're going to find a number of opportunities that are also going to drain you tremendously. And when they drain you, you have to make a mental note. Why is this draining me? What's it taking away from me? What's it hurting in terms of my progress? And when it does energize you, you have to ask yourself the same question. What energizes me about this opportunity? What makes this different than other opportunities? And why am I excited about it? Those are important questions when you're thinking about your next opportunities. The next question is a very important one. And I think it's instinctual. And I think you're going to figure a lot of it out on your own. But I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance for it. It's, how do you know when to pivot? And it's hard for some people to know. And it's a difficult decision when you realize you need to. So pivoting is a unique experience. It's when you realize you have to shift from one area of focus into another. And it doesn't have to be a complete and total massive shift. Sometimes it can be a small pivot. Sometimes it can be a medium pivot. Sometimes it can be a massive shift. But you're going to ultimately have to pivot. Now, a couple key pivots in my life, of course, were I pivoted out of my degree at Tufts University in museum school, and I pivoted into working in a full-time cleaning business. Whether that was a good decision or not, ultimately it was a pivot. I made a decision to conserve energy in one area and put it into another. And obviously I had some learning to do, and I needed to give myself time to do that learning. And if I never gave myself that time to do that learning, I might not have ever done it. I might have just gotten down on myself and made a lot more mistakes. Now, I also pivoted out of the cleaning business to education after achieving my bachelor's degree and working on my master's degree. Now, I pivoted out of my time with my cleaning business and my bachelor's degree and discovering part-time jobs and working on new types of skills. That forced me to pivot. I then pivoted into looking for opportunities related to my career because I had established and completed the degree. I still didn't give up on some of the things that were helping sustain me, but it was a pivot. It was a mind shift change. And you're going to see these mind shift changes come throughout your entire career. And even now, as a professional, I still have times that I need and want to, even as a professional now, I have times that I want to pivot. I want to have a new experience. I want to develop new skills. It's really important to recognize your desire to do this in your career, and also understand what type of learning you need to do in order to make it happen. And also understand what are some of your pitfalls when you do pivot that you want to avoid. So what you're going to find is when something isn't aligned with your goals and is not returning the investment of energy you're putting into it, that might be a time to pivot. Don't confuse momentum with meaning. Sometimes you're going to have momentum in one direction and you're going to feel like this is where everything's going. This is what it's supposed to mean. But you can't apply momentum to meaning. You have to know what you want your meaning to be and then put momentum in that direction. Don't allow someone else's momentum or momentum that you don't really align yourself with to force you in a direction. So it's going to take time for you to understand the best ways to recognize when to pivot, but start tuning yourself into when your environment doesn't necessarily connect with you and when you feel like you can make some shifts and changes to better align yourself to a new type of goal. So thank you for joining me tonight. This is my reflection after a class with some students, and I shared with them some of my own experiences and developed some questions based on my own experiences to help guide them as they start to make some decisions moving forward. So if you're interested, I do some coaching and support for college and career support. So please check that out in the description. Please give it a subscribe. So if you're interested, I do some coaching. Please give it a subscribe and check out the links in the description to get more information. If you have a thought on any of these opinions or ideas, please drop it in the comments. I'd be always interested in hearing what people think. These were my own experiences, and they're things that happened to me, and there were directions that I had to take. And I won't say that any one of them characterizes me as a person either. I think these were all decisions that I moved through. I acquired different understandings, skills, knowledge at every one of these stages. And they all ultimately pushed me towards new types of learning, whether it went from art into technology or art into education. All of it pushed me further to learn more about myself and how to make decisions for myself in my career and what was going to make me happy. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to connecting with you again at Digital Futures Education.